All right, welcome everybody. Thanks for being here today and taking the time. We know obviously there's a lot going on today, so it's great that you guys are willing to do this and put your time in here.
Yes, greatly appreciated. And so today our topic is going to be extending humanity towards others through the practice of healing circles. So my name is Zakia Holman and I am an education consultant from Collaborative Learning Solutions, and joining me is Otzi. You want to?
Sure. My name is Otzi. I'm also an educational consultant for Collaborative Learning Solutions. I'm also a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I have a credential in school counseling. So I'm really glad to be here and super thankful that Zakia asked me to be here and be with you guys. And then of course, we have the lovely Therese.
Hi, everybody. My name is Therese Lewis, and I'm also an educational consultant with Collaborative Learning Solutions. I'm I am learning. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, and I also have my credential in school social work as well. And I'm so excited to be here to have this time with you guys. Thank you for joining us.
Thank each of you for being here. And so what we want to do now is just kind of check the temperature, the emotional temperature of everyone in the room. So as a disclaimer, I just want to say my colleagues and we want to acknowledge that the content that we'll be covering, it may produce some cognitive and emotional dissonance within you. So prior to getting into the actual content, what we want to do is we want to take a moment just to see where everyone is, get a baseline read of where everyone is. So if you will just in the chat there, go ahead and looking at this emotions wheel or coming up with an emotion that's not on the wheel.
Let me put the wheel up there.
Can't see Otzi's screen.
Sorry.
No
Let me put the wheel up there for you guys. That might be helpful. Okay. There we go.
Awesome. So in looking at the wheel, we just want you to go ahead and select one emotion to let us know how you're feeling right now in the moment. And if you could enter that into the chat, we'd greatly appreciate that. I see a great array of emotions: grateful, distracted, engaged, hopeful, vulnerable, tranquil. So many different emotions, overwhelmed. Relaxing, so many friendly faces on here. Awesome. A bit distracted. Awesome. All right. Well, we know that our emotions shape the way that we experience our world, right? So we just wanted to take a moment to reflect on where you are right now and acknowledge you as you are right now. So we thank you for participating in that. And what we're going to do now is we're going to move on to our group agreements, which are as follows. Move this out my way. We're going to treat each other with kindness and respect. We're going to listen with compassion and curiosity, lean into vulnerability, honor our common humanity while simultaneously creating space to celebrate our distinct differences. All right, so here are our session outcomes. Today, what our wish for everyone is just to enhance our reflective capacity by critically analyzing our own lived experiences and those of others to achieve deeper meaning and understanding. So what's our why? What brought us here today? Given the state of our world and the historic challenges we are facing currently, namely economic and health crisis, political polarization, racial tension, social justice and violence, compounded by the socio-political pressures, and so many other contributing factors, right? That for some of us may be slightly troubling, but then for others of us may be downright traumatizing. My colleagues and I, we thought it's necessary to provide a contemplative space to center collective well-being, because we realize that trauma and healing, they're experienced collectively. They're not experienced in a vacuum or by oneself, and they impact our day-to-day existence. So the question then becomes, how do we work through things such as intolerance or injustice or discrimination to attain healing? And by healing, what I'm referencing is the process of transcending dysfunctional polarities that hold repetitive wounding in place. And this takes a great deal of introspection to be able to look at what are the root causes of societal ills and social ills that produce pain and distress. And in addition to that, we want to seek to transform rules and regulations, policies, and institutions that cause harm in the first place. So when we look at collective healing through the lens of equity, the view here is that we can't heal what we fail to acknowledge. I heard Dr. Joy DeGroot speaking yesterday. She wrote this brilliant book, and it's called Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome. And she spoke yesterday, what she said is America's greatest pathology is denial. And so today, each of us are coming forward so that we can acknowledge that there are indeed it's still deep division within our country, racial and otherwise, that must be overcome and it must be healed. So that's our commitment today. Our commitment is just to engage people from racial, ethnic, religious, and identity groups in a genuine effort to increase understanding, communication, and respect for one another. So when it comes to centering collective well-being, we must consider the drivers of such. The American Journal of Health Promotion frames collective well-being as the holistic measure of the overall health of a community, measured across 5 domains, and they're on your screen here. The first being vitality, which is our perceived overall health and positive functioning, as well as emotional experiences and intellect. Opportunity, here this is referencing meaningful assets to relevant mainstream resources. Connectedness is referring to the degree to which a person has or perceives that they have a sufficient number of diverse relationships that allow them to give and receive information, emotional support, material aid, and creates a sense of belonging and value and foster growth. Contribution deals with the feeling or meaning that we have purpose, right? And that we can actually engage in meaningful community actions such as volunteering or civic engagements or belonging to a religious community. And then the last one is inspiration, which is communities members' perceived access to activities that are intrinsically motivating and stimulating. But if I can circle back around to opportunity, if we speak about this in the context of the US, we must acknowledge that the US is set up to make it easier for some people to have access to well-being than for others, based on their race, their ethnicity, their sexual orientation, gender identity, disability status, and other identities. Differences in access to well-being, it creates differences in experiences and outcomes, and this perpetuates inequities. So in particular, if we think of racism, is a key part of what keeps inequality alive in the United States. And ending it and other forms of oppression in our country depends on a broad and deep recognition that we all share a universal drive to well-being. We all have a right to well-being, and we all deserve a fair shot at well-being. But what we also know is that the path to well-being is not always easily accessible. In fact, one of the major roadblocks is what psychologist James Gambarino termed social toxicity. And this is the extent to which the social environment in which we develop and operate is poisonous, in the sense that it contains serious threats to the development of identity, competency, moral reasoning, trust, hope, and the other features of personality and ideology that makes for success. Here are, if we just broadly define toxins to mean harmful or detrimental elements known to impede on normal biological, social, and or emotional functioning. Here are some examples of that. Of course, physical, we know chemicals, hormones, drugs, and things of that nature would be considered physical toxins. When it comes to social toxins, we're really looking at things such as poverty and violence, structural racism, injustice, and hatred. And in terms of emotional toxins, we're looking at insecurity, rage, depression, anxiety, etc. You know, when we first started with the healing wheel, with the emotions wheel, what came to mind in particular is if we looked at the left side of that wheel, it was labeled when your needs are not met. And a lot of these things were over there. So insecurity happens when our needs are not met. Rage happens when our needs are not met. Depression. So I wouldn't necessarily say that these emotions in and of themselves are bad, but the fact is they do kind of have a bearing on our access to wellness, to joy, to fulfillment. And so much like physical toxins, social and emotional toxins can be fatal. Social toxins in particular create difficult life conditions for people. And if they go unprocessed, they may result in a diminished sense of humanity. And by that, what I mean is we may see an increased sense of helplessness and hopelessness. And those are predictors of violent behavior and fatalism and depression. And we also may feel this sense of disconnection where, hey, if this societal issue doesn't impact me personally, then hands off, right? And so all of that comes from a place of a toxic environment. It's really important that we actually consider the structural issues that create suffering in the lives of people, and we work to detoxify our environment through love, kindness, and some of the things that were on the right side of that emotion wheel, so we can come into homeostasis or balance.
Thank you so much for that, Kia. So we're going to transition into, Kia did a really awesome job of setting the foundation for why we need to have this conversation in the first place. I told her I love the idea of social toxins because we can be so physically health conscious, right? We don't want to ingest toxins. We have all sorts of policies and rules and regulations that now require restaurants and organizations and buildings to notify us if there are cancer-causing agents in our midst, right? Things that we didn't know before. Now we have to know, but we don't think about social toxins, and they're real and they have just as much of an impact on our mental health and even on our physical health. Social toxins and physical health are very much connected. The more social toxins we have, the worse our physical health is. If any of you have ever heard of ACEs, called Adverse Childhood Experiences, those are social toxins. And we have another training on that. So I won't go into detail about that, except for to say that those are social toxins that can really, really impact us. And so we understand that we want this idea of collective well-being. But as Kia said, there are things that stop us. There are things that get in the way, and there's things that's getting in the way right now. So that's the purpose of our time together, to identify, as Kia did, what are some of the things that might be getting in the way of our collective well-being, and then how do we move forward from that? How do we heal in the context of contemporary injury? Here's why I love this question, because there's often the idea, and this is not just limited to racism, but if we take the idea of slavery, let's just say, and all of the impacts, the social impacts that it's had on us, on the US, as for us culturally, societally, there's this big idea of they should just get over it, just let it go. Why are we still talking about that? That was so long ago. That's why this question is important, because I might be a person who says, I can move on. That was not my experience. That was how many generations removed, right? So what if I say that? What if that's my posture? And I agree with you. Yes, I can move on. We then have to acknowledge that there's contemporary injury happening. So though I might be willing to let go of the past and acknowledge that it's my job to move forward, it's my job to progress, it's my job to pursue those doors of opportunity and access. I might be willing to acknowledge that, but how do I heal when my current context is continuously and repetitively injuring me, right? So I'm willing to let go of the past, but if there's current contemporary injury, how do I heal from that? So one of the first things we want to look at then is healing-centered engagement. Healing-centered engagement. And this is just a picture, it's not a video. His name is Dr. Sean Jenwright, and he coined the term healing-centered engagement. And healing-centered engagement is a process that aligns institutions with a perspective, an approach, and a strategy that addresses harm, and it also restores well-being. It supports systems with shifting from this harm, discipline, punishment, kind of confinement idea to a sense of restoration, hope, and healing. And I don't know about you all, but I need restoration, I need hope, and I need healing. And I want to be in a context. I want to be on a Zoom. I want to be in a room. I want to be connected with people who want that as well. And the contemporary injury for us is really the idea that no one wants that, because our social toxins have become so prevalent. It's hard for us to even see or believe that anyone wants hope, healing, or restoration, but we do want it. And not only do we want it, we need it. And there are ways for us to get to it, but it is a process that we have to go through together. And the first thing that we have to do is we have to align our perspectives and our approach and our strategy to one that wants to go towards healing and hope, and to be to shift from this idea of harm and division and discipline. We want to awaken our cultural and social resilience. This is a key. How do we awaken our cultural and social resilience? This is not a term that we hear very often. We hear about resilience in general, and we think about it at the individual level, right? When I say someone's resilient, if I say Karen's resilient, I'm talking about Karen as a person. But there is an idea of cultural and social resilience, and it's the presence of positive adaptation or outcomes in spite of adversity. So we can have this on the individual level, but we also have to recognize that we can have it on a cultural level, right? We have cultures that embody resilience. We can embody resilience on a societal level that goes back to the idea of the collective well-being. Cultural resilience is in our roots, as you guys can see on that beautiful graphic there. Culture is a shared set of rules, beliefs, and attitudes that shape our perception and our interpretation of life events. So when we say cultural, I don't want you all to think race, because we have a tendency to make those two synonymous, and they are not. Any and everything has a culture. Your organization has a culture. Your school has a culture. Your home has a culture. Your community has a culture. All it is a shared set of beliefs, right? We can have a culture and create a culture on this Zoom just in the time that we're together. Once we identify the beliefs and the ideologies that we have, that we share together. So the first thing that we need to really understand and embrace and know is that cultural and social resilience is present. It's present within us. It's something that we need, and it's something that we need to be able to pull on within the context of contemporary injury, remembering and understanding that we are resilient and we can have positive outcomes. We can have adaptations that are made in our lives that come to benefit us in spite of the adversity that we're currently experiencing. Another huge tool is the healing circle, and we will have an opportunity to experience it today. We're going to tell you first what a healing circle is. It is a safe space that hopefully we're creating today. So I'm actually, hopefully this doesn't come back to bite me. We had a bunch of people sign up, and of course we want as many people to come as possible, but I'm actually really happy to see 20 people on here because it creates that sense of intimacy for our time in our circle. So it functions for what we want to do today. But a healing circle is a safe space that cultivates exchanges of humanity and vulnerability. I love that. Humanity, we are all human on this call. It's not about my race and my political beliefs and if I believe this or I don't believe that. Let's look at humanity. We all bleed. Okay. And there's an exchange of humanity, an exchange of vulnerability. And that vulnerability is the idea and the willingness to put yourself in harm's way. And I know that sounds bad, but that's what vulnerability is. It's taking a risk and taking a chance, knowing that there could be a negative outcome. And so we have that exchange of humanity and vulnerability through a story sharing process. And that is aimed at unifying us and dialoguing compassionately. I can't emphasize that enough. We are not, as a society, having a compassionate dialogue. We are dialoguing and sometimes monologuing if we're on social media. That's for a conversation for another time. But we are not doing it in a compassionate way. We're not doing it in remembrance of the fact that the person that's on the other end is an actual person with feelings and family and love, concerns and things that matter to them. So it's a space where we can dialogue compassionately about difficult issues. We can compassionately dialogue about painful experiences in an atmosphere that creates a sense of respect and concern for each other, not an atmosphere where we feel we have to fight to disprove the lived experiences of other people. But this healing circle welcomes that. It welcomes the story into the space. It respects the story. It validates the story and invites that compassionate dialogue around it. And ultimately, hopefully, even if it's just momentarily, it brings a sense of healing. So we're getting close to circle time. I'm going to read this quote. It says, "A healer does not heal you." And it speaks to the idea that we're constantly looking externally for our healing. And that's okay. We're going to actually talk about that a little bit in the end to ultimately answer our question. But here's where we have to start. A healer doesn't heal you. A healer is someone who holds space for you while you awaken your inner healer so that you may heal yourself. Sometimes we think that we need other people to do things for us, when really what we need is someone who is willing to hold that space for us, to bring the fullness of who we are and to be accepted and okay. That's when the healing process can really begin, because then the properties we have, the resilience we have within ourselves can come forward and we can begin to heal ourselves. So we have some circle agreements as we transition into it. And this is just a cute little acronym here. You guys can see it says circles. So it says sit up facing each other in a circle or oval. Obviously, we cannot do that over Zoom, but we're going to make a little bit of an attempt. We want you to imagine how other people are feeling as they share. We want you to please respect the thoughts and ideas of others, cooperate, collaborate, and be caring. The L is to listen while others are speaking, and try to listen with your whole heart, ideologies and perceptions and preconceived notions aside. Express your opinions. We want to hear them, but we want to hear them in a compassionate way. And then speak when it's your turn.
Great. Thank you so much, Therese. I could literally listen to you speak all day long.
Thank you, Auntie.
You really are just such a great motivational speaker. Okay, so before we get into our actual circle experience, what we wanted to do is just take everybody to a space of just grounding. Some of the question prompts that we're going to have might spark something emotionally for you. It could trigger some pretty heavy thoughts and opinions. So we want to make sure that we're coming into it in a place of just grounding and peace and calm. So we are going into it in a space of having an open mind and an open heart. So what I'm going to do is just guide you in a really brief meditation. What I'm going to ask you to do is either close your eyes or look down, whichever you're more comfortable with. And we're going to start with just a deep cleansing breath. So just breathe in and breathe out. Today, we're going to do a breathing exercise and focus on bringing positivity into our lives. As we begin and close our eyes, we're going to take a deep breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. Continue to breathe deeply, taking time to focus on your breathing and how it feels. Can you feel it in your chest, in your stomach? Just focus on where that breath goes. Now think about your favorite color or a color that brings you peace and calm. When you breathe in, focus on breathing in that color. We'll let this color symbolize bringing positive things into your day and into your life. When you exhale, imagine that you're breathing out a color that you don't like. Let that color symbolize breathing out the negative things in your day and in your life. Continue to breathe deeply, breathing in your color of peace and breathing out your color of negativity. And slowly, intentionally, take 3 more breaths, imagining your colors and all the stresses that you're breathing out and the positivity and calm that you're breathing in. When you're finished, take 1 last deep breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. And slowly, when you're ready, start to open your eyes. Excellent. I'm starting to see some eyes. Thank you, everybody. Hopefully that was calming and grounding for all of you, because now we get into the fun part.
We get to have our circle. So I am going to read kind of what we're going to do in the circle. It's not complicated, so don't feel overwhelmed like you have to listen for a bunch of stuff. It'll be really easy. But I'm going to tell you what we're going to do, and then we're going to transition in and do it. So we're going to start a healing circle, and we're going to provide an opportunity for 6 participants to share what's on their heart. So even as I'm going over the structure, hopefully you all will be thinking about if you're willing to share or not. There will be 3 heart-to-heart prompts provided, which will be a question that we'll ask. We're going to ask for 2 volunteers to answer each question, which is why it'll be a total of 6. If you are not one of the people answering the prompt, the heart-to-heart prompt, we're going to actually ask you to turn your camera off. If you're answering the question, your camera will be on. If you're not, we're going to ask you to turn your camera off. When we ask that you listen intently, because we will ask for a volunteer to provide a statement of affirmation after each participant shares their answer to the question. So for example, if the question is, what is your favorite month of the year? That's the prompt question. Then I might say my favorite month of the year is November because that is my birthday month and it's my favorite time of the year and it's Thanksgiving. If y'all can tell, that's a real answer. It's my favorite holiday. And then someone who's going to affirm my answer will turn on their camera and say, Teresa, I really liked how excited you got when you answered that question. Thank you for sharing what your favorite month is. They'll turn the camera back off. And then the next person will answer the same question. And we're going to go through for all 6 people. So pretty straightforward, pretty direct there. Again, we do ask for you to listen intently. So we're going to now transition into the first question. So what we're going to do is just ask for a volunteer for the first prompt only, but please be thinking about whether you are willing to answer it all. So when we get to we're going to read all 3. And when you hear the prompts, you might think to yourself, I'd be willing to share on that prompt. So we would love to have at least 2 per prompt. So you guys can see on your screen here, it says the spirit of Ubuntu. It says, I am because you are. This, of course, is Nelson Mandela. It says, in Africa, there is a concept known as Ubuntu, which is the profound sense that we are human only through the humanity of others. We are human only through the humanity of others. That if we are to accomplish anything in this world, it will in equal measure be due to the work and the achievement of others. There's also another one of my favorite quotes that says that if I've seen further than others, it's because I've stood on the shoulders of giants. It's a very similar idea, right? I haven't seen or accomplished or done anything worthwhile without other people. And so that's the same spirit that we want to bring into this healing circle.
Those chimes just want to keep right on going. Give me a second on that one, guys. Okay, there we go. Maybe that's what it was. All right. So moving on to the circles.
So here are the heart-to-heart reflective prompts. Again, I'm going to read all 3, and then we're going to ask for 2 volunteers for the first one only. So the first one is, election is just around the corner. In this climate of contention, what gives you a sense of hope, peace, and/or possibility? What gives you a sense of hope, peace, or possibility? The second one is, from your perspective, what does equity mean? And what's one thing that can be done either at the individual or community level to promote equity? So you're going to share what it means to you, and then what do you think can be done individually or at the community level to promote equity? And then the third prompt says, please share with us an experience of transformation when, out of crisis or difficulty, you discovered a gift in your life. In other words, share with us a time where you had a difficult time, and you can give a general synopsis of whatever that time was. You can go into as much detail as you're comfortable with, but you share with us a difficult time, but more importantly, share with us the gift that you discovered out of that difficult time. So for the first prompt question, do we have 2 people that would be willing to volunteer? And there is a hand raise button that you can also click as well if you want to raise your hand virtually to volunteer for the first prompt.
Oh, we've got Dean.
Okay, Dean. Dean is volunteering. And one more person. Duran. Am I
Yeah.
saying your name right? Okay. All right, awesome. So if we could ask that everyone else turn your cameras off, please.
Do you guys want that question one more time? Are you okay?
Yes, Jeannie is asking to put the question in the chat.
Okay, let me see. here.
I have them, Otzi.
Okay, great. Thank you, because I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to cut and paste from the PowerPoint.
Let's get to everybody. There
Okay,
you go.
perfect.
So that way, for the other ones, you guys can start looking at it and see which one you're willing to volunteer for.
All right, so election is around the corner. In this climate of contention, what gives you a sense of hope, peace, or possibility? Dean, I will have you go first.
Yeah, so this one's easy for me. I did a training last week with one of my colleagues, Mickey. We did a restorative justice center training for 90 high school students. And it was my first time being around through Zoom, high school students, just students in general for a while. I have a particular affinity for high school students. I worked with high school students for 20 years as a school counselor. And in the process of those 2 days, listening to those students process the material and talk about just what the importance of school and the importance of their futures, I was inspired with a sense of hope for the future. It's like these young people coming up are wonderful, wonderful people, and I just look forward to them stepping up and taking their place in our society.
Thank you so much, Dean. Do I have one person that would like to provide an affirmation for Dean's response? All right, Jeannie, go ahead.
You're on mute, Jeannie.
You're on mute, Jeannie.
You need to hear the voice also, right?
Yes.
I was just going to say, Dean, I appreciate the way that you expressed that. Like, I felt like I was in the training with you. You felt that deep in your core, and the way that you expressed it out made me want to be there. And I share that hope with you. Thank you for sharing.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Duran, what brings you hope or a sense of possibility in this contentious climate?
Absolutely. Thank you, Therese. I actually want to extend on what you shared earlier very briefly when you shared the quote of, if I'm seeing further, it's because I'm standing on the shoulders of giants. That is profound, and it's resonating with me because at this time, I feel like I'm literally standing on the shoulders of giants just to be able to be in education, be an educator, to be a trainer, to be on this call and to speak with you all today is a testament to some of the grounding and the groundwork that has been done from our ancestors, our allies in the past, through Jim Crow, through slavery. I mean, just all of the things that we've been through as a country. So at this time, when I'm thinking about as you said earlier, the political polarization and turn on the media, the unrest and the contingency that we're feeling, the brink of something that we're often feeling, I think about how through all of those things we've still overcome. We're overcoming, we've overcame those things. And so it gives me the sense of peace that if it's happened then, how much further can we go now, considering the strides that have been made? So that's what I offer to this space. Thank you again for inviting me to do so.
Oh, you guys, I'm an affirmer, and I need to tell you that I am fighting desperately to not provide my affirmation for what everybody is saying. Just know that. Thank you, Duran. I'm going to leave it at that. Just know
I think that
wanna
counts
say
as an
more.
affirmation, though, Therese. Just that you said that.
Who would like to provide an affirmation for what Duran said? And you can just turn on your camera.
Well, yeah, I will. Beautifully said. I think I was just thinking a couple of hours ago, and I think it relates to what you're talking about, Duran, is that I know I've been moaning and groaning about the state of our country right now, and I was thinking about the things that you were just talking about. Like, we have so little to complain about. I mean, when you think about it in perspective to what think about what slaves had to go through, hundreds of years. I was like, when will this end? And for us, you know, for this pandemic, it's only been a few months. And with regards to our current state of race relations, you know, that unfortunately that's been going on for so long. As a white man, I have, and I've shared this with Therese, I have felt it very little. But I am grateful for having the chance now to experience it, I guess, vicariously. And so I just appreciate what you said, and I like the fact that we're positioned perhaps a little bit better to do something this time. So.
Thank you so much, Dean and Duran. Awesome, awesome. All right, prompt number 2, from your perspective, what does equity mean? And then what's your idea of something that can be done at the individual level or the community level? Otzi, I just totally stole your prompt. Go ahead.
No, please, you're doing great. I'm just here for backup. You're good. But we will need another 2 volunteers, please. Do we have some brave folks in here? Okay, Jessica says she'll go for number 3. Okay, I know this one is a little tough.
I don't mind going Otzi if I need to. Karen, are you volunteering? Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. So the question, from your perspective, what does equity mean? And what's one thing that can be done either at the individual or community level to promote equity? So big question, especially for a time like this.
Karen, I'll let you go first.
Well, thanks. I feel like it's the afternoon, and so what I say may not come out as clearly as I intend for it to do, but let's see what happens. So to me, equity is providing access, opportunity, resources for students, families, community members who do not have access and opportunity and resources typically, to not only fill in any gaps in their learning or in their opportunities, and bring them, you know, I always think of the kids on the boxes, but to bring them to a point where they're able to learn and grow in a way that's equitable, in a way that promotes them and allows them to grow and succeed, and just leveling up the playing field, I guess, is my term for that. Leveling up where I was lacking something before, not at all in terms of a deficit of my own creation, but of the system. And now I'm getting provisions to level up and be able to work alongside everyone else in a manner that allows me to be successful. Yes, that's right.
Thank you. And I think it'd be good for us to both share, Otzi, and then we can have an affirmation for anything that was shared for that question. How about that?
Absolutely.
Okay. You know, for me, there's so many things that I could say about what equity is, but what it boils down to for me is equity is you seeing me as a person and what I need, and you as an educator, as a leader, whatever position you might hold, it is you trying to see how can I, in my position, help meet that need. That's the bottom line. Because just like for those of us who have children, our children all need different things. Equity says, look at your child for who they are and try your darndest to give them what they need based on what it is that they need. Not that you lump all your kids in together and say, I'm going to give this one thing to all of you all because you're all my kids and this is what I got. That's not equitable. Equity is seeing me as a person and seeing how whatever it is that I might need, how you can help meet that need and vice versa. I see you as a person. How can I meet your needs individually rather than flowing into the entire group? So that's my idea of equity.
And I just want to affirm you both, even just for going into this conversation, because I really feel like, especially in this climate, sometimes people are afraid to have the conversation or are intimidated by what somebody else's views might be. So even just having the courage to have this conversation and acknowledge this is what I think equity is and this is what I think equity is, it really brings us to a place of community where we're able to bring all of our ideas together, collaborate, and really start implementing some of them in either small ways or impacting a whole community. Were there any other affirmations that anybody else wanted to throw in? Patricia, thank you.
Yes. I thought Karen started out very nicely with providing access, opportunity, resources by being reflective of who we are and up-leveling that. And then Therese, of course, take it a step further with meeting individually, seeing, right, or people or students or staff or team, and meeting them, like Karen started, with their individualized needs. So I had a quote from one of my co-admin that gave it to me that I thought was so easy to remember. It's not that we want to give all of our kids shoes. It's we give them the shoes that fit them. So I thought that was very nicely done, that I can remember so clearly.
Yes.
That's excellent. That's so true, right? It's never a one size fits all. We got to figure out what each one needs. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Patricia. Okay.
And now we're going to segue over to question number 3. So if we could get an additional volunteer, I think Jessica said she would volunteer. And if we could get one more person, Dean's going to volunteer. And the prompt is, just so we all remember, please share with us an experience of transformation when out of a crisis or difficulty, you discovered a gift in your life. So out of crisis or difficulty, you discovered a gift in your life.
Hey, I'm gonna be vulnerable.
Thank you, Jessica.
Having a rough day because I have more situation going on with my daughter, but my adversity or my crisis, it seems like it's a daily thing. I have a daughter who's severely mentally ill. She went into the Army, one person, and came out of the Army, another person. And she has such an extreme version of something going on inside her head that still hasn't been completely and fully diagnosed. And right now, to this day, she's sitting in jail because that's what we do to our mentally ill in this country. We throw them in jail. And before we do that, we shoot them in the back and then we throw them in the jail. And so going through all of these crises and all these psychotic events that have resulted in her interacting with the police and witnessing directly how, I have to say, thank God her skin is white, because it's awful enough to witness what she's experienced as a person of white skin who's mentally ill, and all the brutality that she's experienced from the police who don't understand how to address the needs of mentally ill. I've learned to stop being ashamed of what's going on because it's not my fault. And I've learned to fight against the stigma of mental illness, and I've learned to speak up about it. And I've learned that the more I do speak up about it, the more others are willing to speak up about it. And it's actually revealing a more complex story to what we're dealing with in this country that has allowed me to, I think, really fully listen to other people without any judgment, and to understand the experiences and the anguish that so many people in our country go through when it comes to not having access and not having opportunity, and not being treated right. And so I don't know whether you call it a talent or a skill, but maybe it's an epiphany. It's just realizing that I can now speak up for others who are so afraid to speak up about what they're experiencing, and just kind of like getting it out there and letting people know what's going on in my life has really helped others to heal a little bit, and to be able to know that it's okay to talk about it, and to try to get more on the table for our country for our community to listen to and heal from.
Well, I'm going to break the protocol and say thank you so much, Jessica, for sharing something that's so personal, that's touching you and your daughter's lives. And I extend my compassion to you. And then thank you too for being such a great advocate, for something that when we talk about mental health or mental illness, there is a great stigma attached to it for so many in so many communities. So I thank you for just being vulnerable, and speaking your truth in this space. All right, Dean, would you like me? Oh, did someone else want to say something? Sherry,
Jessica, I just want to thank you for sharing that too, as someone who has loved someone who has come home from a war and turned into a different person also. I understand what you're going through, and from a little bit of that perspective. And I just really appreciate you for sharing and bringing it out there, because you're right. It is important, and it is very, very prevalent. So I appreciate you very much for sharing.
And then I noticed Bill cut on your camera. Bill, what would you like to say?
Thank you as well to Jessica, and I think you described something so important, that it's a very personal, a very individual decision to decide to speak out on something you have knowledge of. And there's so many different competing efforts in this country right now to make sure that people are aware of different causes and different situations that develop. And what's interesting is, like, I think nationally, whereas before there were a lot of very under the radar, almost silent causes, and you'd see, a jogathon here, and you'd see a fundraising campaign here or whatever, there was almost these boutique causes that people would endorse, and they would very separate, and they were almost competing. And I think what you're seeing nationally is that there's more understanding that there's coexisting causes. There's a very shared experience that people are dealing with right now. And even though it may not be something having to do with somebody coming out of the military, I think that we're getting more empathetic in some circles, in some corners. We're realizing that there's a lot of different things going on with a lot of different people. So I just appreciate that you shared that one, and seeing more and more come to the forefront as people get more comfortable sharing that.
Really quickly, I have to step in as well. This has been a great experience for me, you guys. Jessica, your voice is freeing others. I feel compelled to say that to you. Understand that there is freedom in your advocacy. There is freedom and liberty that people are seeking because they're suffering in silence, and they're suffering under the fear of judgment and the fear of ridicule. And so I want to let you know that every time you speak and you choose that vulnerable space to share, there's liberty coming to people. Liberty to their voice, liberty to their mind, liberty to their ability and willingness to accept and to advocate. Thank you for sharing the gift, because that is a gift that I don't think maybe you had before all of this, right? That's an absolute gift that you are now choosing. You've chosen to share in this space. And I know that you'll share it with the world one day.
Thank you. I'm not trying to steal a show, but thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's a safe space, no show. We are dependent on our humanity, remember?
All right, Dean, share with us your experience.
So there's so many to choose from. I'm going to tell a story about my daughter. So my daughter was struggling with some of the same things that Jessica mentioned, although my daughter had been involved with somebody that was also a heavy drinker and say, bouts of almost episodic alcoholism. On May 14th in 2017, my daughter and her fiance, Chris, came over to celebrate Mother's Day with us. And my daughter brought her granddaughter as well. So we got to spend a beautiful day with the three of them. And at one point in the day, I got to step out into the backyard with Chris. And we had a chance just to talk kind of man on man about his plans for the future and what he had in purpose for his life. It was a beautiful day. The following day I got up and I went to work, and I learned that one of the seniors at one of our high schools had died by suicide the night before. So on Mother's Day, she had taken her life. As one of the people involved with our crisis team, I had to respond to the school. I ended up going out to her boyfriend's house and sitting with him on the bed as he was, crying and just not being able to understand his loss and her taking her life. Thursday, there was a kind of impromptu celebration at the school with all the students that had known her and wanted to celebrate her. It was a rough week. I decided I was going to take Friday off, and my wife and I were actually getting up early to go to Mass. And we got a call from my daughter, Bethany, at about 6:30 to tell us that Chris had passed away suddenly during the night. And she was hysterical and crying. They lived just a few miles from us. We drove over, and my wife took our granddaughter and brought her back to the house. And I stayed with Bethany until the coroner arrived, and watched as my daughter gave Chris, her last kiss as they zipped him into a body bag. It was a hard week. At that point, I told Bethany, they had been renting a condo, come live with us. So my daughter had lost her fiance. My granddaughter had lost the person she knew as her daddy. And there was just, monumental levels of grief for all involved. And I've been hiking. I'm a hiker. So I want to say 3 weeks after this happened, my daughter actually got into a substance abuse program to get sober. I was going to go off the next morning for a hike, and I asked her if she wanted to go. She said, "You know what? I would like to go hiking." So we went hiking together, and over the next couple of weeks, we would go a couple of times a week hiking. And one morning on our way back from hiking, I said to her, how are you doing? And she said, "Dad, I do better on the days that we hike." And I said, "Then let's hike every day." So we started hiking every day, and every day she was usually in front of me because she's a little bit better shape than I am. And I would watch as she would climb this hill. We climbed every day, and I'm just thinking about climbing this hill, but also climbing this mountain of grief, and watching her take it on step by step. She has become a dear friend, and she has become my hiking buddy. And so it's been 3.5 years. She's doing well. we hiked this morning, and we've taken a couple of trips up into the Sierras together. So the gift I received was the gift of my daughter back, and I get to have my granddaughter right down the hallway, and she's delightful. So that's my story. Yeah.
All right, can I say something? I know, breaking protocol all over the place, right? We're rule breakers. I just want to acknowledge the incredible resilience that is clearly in this room. And I mean, Dean, what a gift. I mean, to have your daughter back, and Jessica as well. I mean, and those are two stories, right? And we have all these people in this room that may not have the same story, but likely there's still going to be an incredible amount of resilience, even just in the past few months that we've had COVID. How many stories of resilience are there? Even just having to uproot some of our routines, switch them around. We've all had to be pretty resilient at a time like this. So I just want to thank everybody that's participated. And Dean, thank you for your story as well.
And if I could just add go ahead, Kia.
I just wanted to say thank you to Dean for being so vulnerable and for his story as well, because we were together and we've had some conversations, but that's an aspect of Dean that I did not know. So just the power when you amplify your voice and you're willing to lean into that vulnerable space, that's transformative on so many levels, you know? So I thank you for your courage, Dean, and I'm glad you got your daughter back, you know, and at a whole nother level where you're companions and enjoying nature. I do know that about you. I know you love nature, so that you have that opportunity to do that in the midst of your loved one is such a great gift. So thank you for that.
Sherry.
So Dean, I've already shared that you're inspirational to me from the hiking aspect. And I truly think about you when I actually get up in the morning and get dressed and do it, but you just took it to a whole new level. So I really appreciate you sharing. Brings tears to my eyes, and I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Dean, thank you for sharing. I remember when it happened. And you stood so strong for your daughter, and you still are today, but the gift that you shared with us to see her heal is amazing. And you sometimes, you know, when people go through grief, we want to have these complicated answers, right? We want to fix it, but you took one moment and one comment. She said, "Dad, I feel better when we hike." So you shifted and did what you needed to do and said, okay, well, then this is a tool that we're going to use to facilitate your healing. And you did that, and you were committed to it. You created a safe space for her that she didn't have within herself at that time. And it facilitated her to this place. So I'm always moved when I hear that, but I'm even more moved to hear now, years later, right? And where you guys are, and you're still consistent and committed to that space of safety for her. So thank you for sharing that. All right. Thank everybody for sharing. You guys can turn back on your cameras now. And I think it might be good for us all to take a nice deep breath as we end our last 15 minutes here. Oh, I need a breath and some tissue. Lord have mercy. Jesus. All right.
So, and as you're all turning your cameras back on, we just want to open the floor briefly to any other comments that anybody wants to make, whether about specific stories or commentary that people made, or just your own personal experience of what it was like to just kind of tune out and listen to other people. So of course, you're more than welcome to unmute and speak, or if you're not quite comfortable with that, you can also add it to the chat. I see a couple people have already done that. But since we didn't get everybody, having their space to speak, we just wanted to offer that to everybody that maybe didn't get to say anything.
If I can just share briefly.
Sorry.
But I'll just share briefly that I'm part of an equity team for the San Diego County Office of Ed, and one activity that we do with our participants is, like practice constructivist listening, and we say, we're going to practice getting into pairs and just simply listening to your partner for the benefit of the partner. And we give them gradually more difficult questions to grapple with, and get them to see that just simply listening for the benefit of the speaker is a way of allowing them to process and heal. But what I really liked, and I didn't think about doing, is such a simple thing that you guys did, is have everybody turn their camera off and let that person speak. Because man, it's hard. Your body is constantly trying to read body language on Zoom. You're flipping through all the different videos, trying to figure out who's on the call and trying to figure out what's going on. I mean, when you're in those big meetings. And, so it's nice. It's nice. I think that's another way in the virtual world in a Zoom call to reinforce that you're listening for the benefit of the speaker. And I just, that was interesting. I like that. I'm going to try that.
Great.
Good.
Yeah, absolutely. Patricia, I think you had a thought.
I just want to share something with everyone, but especially for Jessica and Dean. Thank you again for sharing your lived experience. In our district, we work with Arbinger Institute on the outward mindset. And one of the books is The Anatomy of Peace. So for those that are having no inner peace with your heart due through trauma, I think by reading that book, you will learn how to remove judgment, how to leave your heart at war on one side to find inner peace and clarity, so your heart will be at peace. And also to Dean, thank you for sharing that it's death by suicide. We have to say it that way to not put a stigma. It's new for me because our superintendent, he lost his son through death by suicide 2 years ago, and I just learned that terminology versus someone, I'm not using it in any other ways, but the term I'm using is death by suicide.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Patricia. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Language is important.
Sure is.
Thank you.
All right, Achi, do you want to share your screen?
I guess so. I'd rather just stare at everybody's faces, but I will share my screen.
It looked like Bill had something to say.
Oh, okay, Bill, did you have any?
Yeah.
Just really briefly, it was back on and now the question's not there, but I just wanted to talk real briefly in this question in the chat, talking about things that can be done at the individual or community level. And I was thinking about resources. We're a room full of professional people. We've got tons of experiences and things, and we're discussing how, we can access resources and community and things like that. And it always comes to mind in the families and students that we deal with that they may not have an understanding of how to navigate all of those things. And I think it's something that's I'm sure is present in all of our minds, but in terms of making sure we're doubling down on our efforts to reach out, especially now where people are, a lot of us, at home and stuck at home and maybe not able to go out into the community. Some families may not feel that they can navigate things as well as they could even before. So reaching out digitally is just even more, another layer of complexity, depending on what their level of technological access is. So just thinking about that piece, and that I'm really glad to hear all the comments today, and thinking about how we can make sure that we're helping people access the things that they might not even know exist, right, or how to get to them. So.
Yeah. It reminds me a little bit of, I think at the beginning of COVID, when people were being quarantined, and the more vulnerable, like older folks, that weren't necessarily able to go out, and neighbors or other random people that were just extending that as an opportunity, like, hey, I'm going to the grocery store, what can I grab you? Even more, there is that need of connecting and reaching out to people and finding out within my own capabilities, what can I do? What are my areas that I can support somebody else? And for those of us in education, even more so, right, with our students, because some, may not have the technology, some may not know how to access the technology, or those that have it might not necessarily know how to use it. And it's so much easier to just give up at that point. So it really is a matter of taking that active role and reaching out to other people. So thank you for acknowledging.
Yeah, and I think too that
Thank you, Bill.
we can't forget that there's community agencies that will reach out to, that it's not up to just us, and that they want to. And so figuring out also how to activate, to know who those agencies are, because there are people who have the same mission that want to help, and it's up to us to figure out who they are and get them activated, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, everyone. Now I will go back to sharing my screen. Okay. All right. So really, we've already kind of had our reflection, but I just want to, again, just thank everybody for participating and really engaging in this experience with us. And it all kind of leads to this idea of post-adversity growth, right? We all have our own stories. We've all had opportunities where we've needed to be resilient. And with this experience of COVID, with the experience of the murder of George Floyd, we really do need to come to a place where we're not necessarily going to be healed, so to speak, but we can come out of it with more resilience, with more ability to connect, with other resources and innovative ideas and things that we can do in order to reach out and really connect with other people. The hope really is, of course, for a better future, right? And that's really what we're working towards. So the big question here, how does one heal in the context of contemporary injury? And I think what Bill was saying kind of points to what the answer here is, at least for the time being, which is community, which is the purpose of the healing circles, to find ways to really hear each other, to connect with each other, to reach out to each other, and like Dean said, to some of the other resources that we have available to us, and share those. Use them, share them with our neighbors, especially those that you feel like might not have access or know how to get in contact with some of those. I'm also going to allow Therese and Kia to add to that, because I feel like Therese wants to say something, but please, if I missed anything, feel free to add on there.
No, I didn't need to. I mean, I can always say something. Community. We heal in community, together in our humanity. If you don't have a community, you guys, let us know. There are groups, because our communities right now is Facebook and virtual stuff, and those communities are becoming really toxic and divisive. That's where we started, right? So sometimes we have to be intentional to go find a different community where we can heal together. We can have that culture, those shared experiences. We can share our stories, our experiences, our perspectives in a way that will be dialogued about compassionately. We can be vulnerable and not leave injured. If those things are happening to you, that's not the community for you. So let's find a community, because that is the answer to the question that we started this off with. How do we heal in the context of contemporary injury? It's in community, safe community. And thank you for guys for being our community for the last hour and 20 minutes.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, Teresa and Otzi, I would just say, when I think of community, I think of a safe place where there could be interdependence.
you know, being a single mom and kind of shouldering all that heavy lift alone, that's one thing. And I really don't think that I would be able to do it if I didn't have a tribe around me that helped to support that. So I think just that interdependence is not a bad thing. But in our society, it's all about independence. I think interdependence is a strength, and it takes some humility to even engage in that. And then that collective engagement piece, and then service to others. All of that happens within community. So we thank you all so much for participating in this moment with us. And we wanted just to leave with you a couple of resources. Ozzy, I don't want to step on you, so go for it.
No, it's okay. So we have here the future of healing, shifting from trauma-informed care to healing center engagement. And then we also have the PowerPoint deck, so all of the slides that we showed today. So these are both here and accessible for you. I'm not sure if we were going to forward on the recording to attendees, so we can definitely talk to Jessica about that. But I will also try to put it into the chat. I might need to stop share for a second.
Yeah, and just copy the link.
Yeah, because I do have it on my desktop.
I might be able to grab them too, Ozzy. Let me try.
So if we could, as we end, we started out with the feelings wheel. If we can just end in the chat with the feelings wheel, and then we will bid you all adieu.